Ladies and gentlemen, I have something to say about one of my favorite topics of all time, the concept of self belief, the acceptance of change, and destiny. Kismet, if you will. Kismet means destiny. I love this conversation for a lot of reasons, but one of the main ones is because I just genuinely feel it in my soul. And I'm making a video today. I'm not a full-time niqabi, so anyone who knows me is going to be a bit surprised to see me like this, but my mom said that bad men will take your face on the internet and put it in dirty videos, and I don't want that to happen, but I have something to say. So I wanted to talk about four of my favorite characters of all time. I just think that all of their stories are so important and so amazing, and they link perfectly to the point I'm trying to make today. If you don't accept that there's a problem, how can you change it? Once you've accepted the situation, then you can start to change the situation if you believe in your ability to change the situation. Are you still with me? Okay, you're still with me. You're still with me. You get it. We are going to be discussing four of my favorite examples of fate, self-belief, and change in media, I suppose, like TV shows. But it's kind of it's movies and anime, so yeah, media. I love that I say discuss, but in reality, you're just gonna listen, and I'm gonna talk and read. So if I'm looking down, don't judge me. I know I've been looking down. I'm trying my. It's my first time doing this. I couldn't keep it all in my head. Um. So yeah, sit back, relax. Let's have some fun. I was gonna start with a breakdown of what self belief and hope actually are, but I hope that no one needs that. So I'm just gonna chuck in some dictionary definitions. Please read. So we're going to have two categories. We're going to have resistance and acceptance. I was thinking whether to go acceptance, acceptance, resistance, resistance, or resistance, acceptance, resistance, acceptance. It gets to the point where I'm just taking the piss. Um, we're going to go rejection, rejection, acceptance, acceptance. So we can end on a high note and then also compare how the differences between characters, basically. And then obviously the situations are very different, but I think we can learn from the decisions that they made. Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy with this. Okay. So I'm gonna jump into this without getting emotional because Kung Fu Panda is my Kung Fu Panda 1 is my favorite movie of all time, and the Kung Fu Panda trilogy is my favorite trilogy of all time. Kung Fu Panda is my favorite trilogy of all time. I really wish they would make a fourth one because they could do a lot of good with that movie. Anyway, for those who don't know, Kung Fu Panda is a movie that follows a panda called Po, who is accidentally chosen to be the legendary Dragon Warrior. The Dragon Warrior is a great hero who saves everyone. Po is fat and he sells noodles and he's just silly. And Master Shifu, who has to end up training him alongside the Furious Five, who are a group of ninja that have literally been training their whole lives, thinking that one of them will be the Dragon Warrior. Shifu has to train him, but he's really pissed off and he hates Po and just everything that he is. And he just kind of refuses to accept him as a Dragon Warrior because, in his words, he was chosen by accident. Then Master Oogway, who chose Po, was just like, there is no accidents. And I think he dies.
Did Jet just die? It was really unclear.
So Shifu is now a lot more stressed, and all this stress because Oogway has a vision at the start of the film saying that Tai Lung will return. Shifu panics. He sends a message to prison to say, make sure he doesn't get out. This is one of my favorite parts about the whole film is because when he sends the messenger, Uguay says to him, we often meet our destiny on the path we take to avoid it. When the messenger goes to the prison, he's shown around, the guard is all gassed about how safe they are and how Tai Lung is never getting out. The bird gets scared at one point and he drops one of his feathers into Tai Lung's prison, where he's being held. Tai Lung uses that feather to escape. So if Shifu had never sent him to tell them not to to make sure that he was being kept under guard properly, if he had never done that, Tai Lung probably never would have got out. Do you see this thing about destiny? It's amazing. Anyway, Poe's past just starts at one point breaking down cupboards trying to find food, and Shifu clocks that Poe has great potential. It just needs to come out in a different way. And at this point, he's a lot more stressed because he knows Tai Lung is out and Tai Lung is coming. Instead of trying to change Po at this point, he decides to work towards his strength and make him stronger. They start training with food, he gets stronger, he gets disciplined, and he beats Shifu to a dumpling at one point, potential unlocked, and now he needs to open the Dragon Scroll, which only the Dragon Warrior is allowed to look at. But before they open it, the Furious Five are flown back, literally paralyzed after trying to fight Tai Lung themselves. Po opens the scroll and it's empty. Shifu's confused, Poe's just completely hopeless, and he just starts to evacuate with all the other civilians, where they make fun of him a bit. Kind of deserved. Not really. Anyway, Shifu stays behind and decides that he's going to face Tai Lung. And keep in mind, at this point, I would say we're told the story of Tai Lung in a very biased way. The story we're told is that Shifu took Tai Lung and raised him like a son, told him he had great potential, and told him, train hard, you can be the Dragon Warrior. Oogway told him he wasn't the Dragon Warrior, and Tai Lung just destroyed the valley and tried to take the Dragon Scroll by force, but he was defeated by Oogway. Then, when Tai Lung and Shifu are fighting, we see the story from Tai Lung's perspective, but Shifu never really argues against it as much, so I guess the truth is what we see. He says that he was trained with nothing in mind except being Dragon Warrior, that he was pushed to the point, in his words, to the point of his bones breaking. In fact, let me play the scene. We're playing the scene.
You were not meant to be the Dragon Warrior. That was not my fault.
Not your fault? Who filled my head with dreams? Who drove me to train until my bones cracked? Who denied me my destiny?
Shifu apologizes after the fight, after hearing Tai Lung out, I guess, but Tai Lung doesn't care. He wants the scroll. And while this fight is happening, Po ends up talking to his dad, and his dad tells him that he's ready to know the secret ingredient in their family famous secret ingredient noodle soup. Po's adopted, his dad is a goose. Anyway, he is then told that there is no secret ingredient, which is another one of my favorite scenes and one of my favorite movie lines of all time. And he says to him, in order for something to be special, you simply have to believe that it's special. Po clocks that this is what the scroll was talking about, saying that there's no big secret to being Dragon Warrior. It's just you and who you are. He's now enlightened. He defeats Tai Lung, and I think he kills him. Anyway, Po's the Dragon Warrior, and everyone's happy.
I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy.
Let's break this down very quickly. Along with context that we know from the movie and from the show that they did a spin-off show for Kung Fu Panda called Secrets of the Scroll. I haven't fully watched it because I don't like the animation. Anyway, Tai Lung, the full story. Tai Lung was abandoned as a baby and left at the doorstep of one of the greatest Kung Fu teachers ever. He raises Tai Lung like a son, and he shows him love, compassion, and he trains him. Shifu knows about the Dragon Warrior for a while, and he's always kind of been hoping that it's going to be Tai Lung. Okay, no. Hoping would be, you might be the Dragon Warrior, but you might not. He told him, you are the Dragon Warrior, bro. You can do this. And I guess you could argue that Shifu didn't put it in his head because we don't know the exact words that he said, but you can kind of hear it from Tai Lung's words. But who denied me my destiny? He really believed he was the Dragon Warrior. He was trained to the point of collapse, like the literal destruction of his body. He was trained that far, pushed that far. I just don't think he would be pushed that far, or Shifu would allow his son to push himself that far if he didn't believe that there was going to be, if he believed that this was going to work, like he was going to be the Dragon Warrior. Anyway, even in that moment, all these years later, the way that he talks, he still says, it's my destiny. Like, who denied me my destiny? This is kind of where I switch it up, though. I'm not blaming Shifu. I don't think it's entirely his fault that Tai Lung ended up the way he did. I do think he's a major cause, and I do think that he convinced Tai Lung that being the Dragon Warrior was like the most important thing in the world. Like nothing else mattered except that title, and that if Tai Lung worked hard enough, he would be able to achieve it. But it didn't happen. Oogway said no, and Shifu said nothing. And Tai Lung's world, like everything he had ever known, everything that was important to him, literally shattered in front of his eyes. I am going to come back to this point about Shifu not backing him up in that moment because it genuinely intertwines perfectly with my second resistance character, but we'll just focus on Tai Lung's choice at this point, because he did make a choice in that moment, a moment of anger, a moment of heartbreak, which is completely expected because his life is literally torn apart. He's mourning what could have been. Tai Lung's mistake was thinking that he could steal the scroll, that he could force his destiny. It's not possible. The Dragon Scroll is for the Dragon Warrior, and he isn't the Dragon Warrior. And it's sad because he was one of the strongest and most capable fighters ever. He's incredible. We all saw him fight 20 years later, and he just broke out of prison. You don't remember that fight when he broke out of prison. That was amazing. And he did that after being literally left in a crouched position for 20 years, barely being allowed to move. And he still had that much ability. Imagine him in his prime. Unfortunately, and maybe this is a bit controversial for me to say, I would say that he wasted those 20 years because of his own weakness. Because in that moment, when the Dragon Scroll was taken away from him, he wasn't able to see that life, you couldn't see that there was anything else that life had to offer for him. And you could bring it back to Shifu and how he wasn't shown anything else, but ultimately, who ends up suffering? Even in their final fight, he brings his master, his father, to his knees. Shifu does recognize his son. He apologizes for what he did. But at that point, it's just too late. 20 years, 24 hours a day thinking about his revenge, not even like defeating Shifu revenge. He was thinking about that scroll. He was thinking about his destiny. And you could argue that maybe if he had the chance to change, to atone, maybe he would. But I don't think he would. He broke out of that prison. He could have gone anywhere. He didn't. He went for the Dragon Warrior. And keep in mind at this point, he's like 20 years weak. Like he's bent over. He's, like I said, he's at a significant disadvantage to, as far as he knows in his head, the greatest warrior that China has to offer. And he still goes for him. And it's to prove a point. He needs to prove that point of like, I am as good as the Dragon Warrior. I'm better than what Oogway and what they chose, or who they chose to be the Dragon Warrior. I'm better than him. And he had to prove that because he's obsessed. He didn't accept the scroll wasn't his, and he just thought that the problem was he didn't fight hard enough. It's sad because you can't, again, but Shifu moved on and had a whole life. He trained Tigress, he trained the Furious Five, and Tai Lung was locked up because of his own choices, whether we want to accept that or not. It's not fully fair. Maybe it was a moment of anger, but he attacked the village. He threatened civilians. He hurt countless innocent people. He became a threat, and he was just treated like one. And it is heartbreaking when you see young Tai Lung, who's proud, sweet, and he just kind of wants his master's approval, and then wanting what he fought so hard for. But this is the problem. When we think of destiny, we think of it as something that belongs to us, that bends to our will, that we can change to work for us. We don't. We really don't, and that's a fact. In life, you can control yourself. You can control your reactions. You can't control your situations. You can't control the weather, but you can control what you wear. You can't control your grade. You can only study for the exam. You can't control who lives, who dies, who tells you. Anyway, my point still stands. You can control yourself, and it feels like we can't when life gets very hard. It's so important that you kind of ground yourself because it is your life and you do control you and not your circumstances. Because you can work as hard as you want for something, you can hope and pray, but that doesn't entitle you to anything. It doesn't entitle destiny or fate to work the way that you want it to. More importantly, whether you believe in a higher power or not, sometimes what you want isn't what's best for you. And there's a reason that you didn't get it. I think people realize this as they get older, but some people don't, and they spend their whole lives fighting for something that would have ruined them. How many stories have we seen of people that like fight for what they wanted their whole life, whether it was like revenge or it was money or whatever it is, and they sacrifice like the whole world for it, and it's all they care about, and then when they get it, they just feel empty. There's nothing left. Rick is a great example of this. I don't know if you haven't watched Rick and Morty, you're probably not going to get this little honorable mention. Rick Sanchez, his family was killed when he was like younger, and he spends his entire life trying to find the guy. It's him, but like a different version of himself. Anyway, he killed his own family, and he eventually finds this guy. Like technically, like I think 20 years later. No, it would have been like 30 years later, but for us, it's like a good 8 seasons later. And he finds the guy, and he beats the shit out of him, and he kills him slowly and painfully. And it's like he's done it, and nothing changes. And I love that they did it in such an amazing way because they put the episode in the middle of the season. So after that episode, everything was just back to normal Rick and Morty, how it goes, adventures, and him being depressed and drinking, and nothing changed. He felt no change. He didn't feel better. It didn't take away anything. Nothing. And it's so crazy to see because not only time, but most of the time when Rick was really excited and happy and like passionate, it was when we were talking about killing the guy who killed his family. And then he did it and he got what he wanted, and that's it. Now the only thing you spent your life fighting for is gone. Do you see what I mean? We are going to move on to my second character. His name is Toya Todoroki. You probably haven't heard of him. I don't think Toya's story is going to be as known as some of the other people in the video, but he is from an anime called My Hero Academia. I love him. We're only going to focus on his story in the show. We're not going to talk about everything else. But My Hero Academia is a show where basically 80% of the population is born with quirks that are kind of like superpowers. A lot of people train to be heroes. Heroes are often treated like celebrities. Imagine The Boys, but like for kids. And then like Homelander isn't All Might, because I feel like if you look at the two, yeah, Homelander's not. No, not at all. Anyway, so you got the number one hero, which is All Might. The number two hero of all time is called Endeavor. He has a fire quirk. He is a very powerful guy. He's a piece of shit, I'll be honest with you. He sucks. He has 4 children. We're not going to focus on the white kids. We're going to focus on the red kids. Endeavor married his wife Ray because she has an ice quirk. His big dream is to have a child that has both a fire and an ice quirk. He has his first son, Toya, who has a fire quirk. Toya's very powerful, even at a very young age. Endeavor gets him obsessed with the idea of being the number one hero and just overall being the best. Eventually, Endeavor learns that Toya's body isn't built to withstand his quirk, and so he can't use his powers without getting hurt. Endeavor's really pissed off. He tells Toya, like, no more training and, like, find a new dream, find some friends or something. At this point, he has Toya, who has the fire quirk. He has 2 other kids who are irrelevant, but they have the ice quirk. And then he has his youngest son, Shoto, who is one of our main characters. Shoto has both an ice and a fire quirk. So you can see why Endeavor was so quick to stop giving a shit about Toya. You lot don't understand what I mean when I'm talking about Endeavor. The things he was doing to his children, like, this is what he was doing to, like, Shoto to get him to train.
Forget about beating All Might, or even a small-time villain.
Let me show you what he was doing to his wife.
Get out of my way!
Be of use for once!
Toya's like, I think 5 at this point. He just cannot take it. This idea that he can't be number one. This kid, he just, like, he just can't. Anyway, bless him. Kid keeps training, and this is what Endeavor does when he finds out that Toya's still training.
I asked you to do one thing! Just stop him from training!
It's not funny. I do not support domestic violence. So anyway, this is what he does to Ray every time something doesn't go his way. If, like, All Might's doing better than him, he beats up Ray. He's a piece of shit. I have no other words for him, I'll be honest with you. Anyway, Toya keeps training, and he tells his dad, like, look, come meet me on this mountain, and I'm going to show you how well I'm doing. Endeavor doesn't turn up, and Toya ends up getting so hot that he almost burns himself to death. His dad thinks he's dead. They find, like, charred bones, and, like, the doctor's like, yeah, it was too hot. He's definitely dead. He's gone. And so everyone thinks he's dead. He is eventually found by the main villain in the show and put into a hospital where he is in a coma for 3 years. He does wake up and he does escape. He goes home to see his dad because God bless him. He goes home and he's like, oh, the last time I was there, I shouted at my dad and I shouted at my mom, like, I need to say sorry. I need to fix everything. And he really missed his dad. And he went home. And this is what he sees. He sees this and he's just really pissed off at the fact that nothing has changed. He decides that he's going to surpass Endeavor, that he's going to, like, not only be better than him and everyone else, that he's going to make Endeavor suffer. Like, that is his life's mission. And I'm here for it. Toya ends up training, he dyes his hair black, and he joins the League of Villains under the name Darby. So if you hear me saying Darby, I might get a bit mixed up. I'm talking about Toya. They're the same person. You just need to stay with me. League of Villains is a group of villains that just fight heroes that want to, like, take over the world. Anyway, eventually he does reveal himself in the most... It was like in the middle of a big-ass fight where the heroes were already losing, and then the villains were starting to lose, and there was a lot of tension, and he just, like, washes his hair, and the dye comes out immediately, and he starts dancing around like a genuinely crazy person. He's losing his whole mind. In fact, watch the scene.
I'm starting to have fun. I wondered how I could make you suffer. How I could ruin your life.
What I did love, though, is that he didn't just announce it there in front of all the heroes and in front of Endeavor and his brother, Shoto. He announces it to the world. He makes a video and he starts talking about what Endeavor did to him. And I do rate it because at this point, Endeavor's the All Might has a fight and he's out of commission. So Endeavor's the number one hero. And this guy, like, he tortured his sons. Okay, he didn't really torture Toya, but he tortured Shoto. He abused his whole family. He beat his wife to the point where she had to go into a mental hospital because she was driven so mad by him that she burned the face of her own child because he looked like him. Anyway, he's strong and he's a good fighter and he's powerful, but how does he represent good and justice? How can he be the number one hero? And everyone just thinks, yeah, it's fine, let's love him. No, bait him out. I love it. And at one point, Endeavor does go on, like, a journey of, like, self-change and discovery, and forget him, man. In the big fight at the end of the show, Toya ends up facing off with Shoto, his little brother. But he refuses to kill him. He fights him, but he's like, I'm not going to kill you because Endeavor's not here, and I want to watch you die. That was perfect. And he has this whole thing of, like, I'm going to kill his perfect child, his perfect prodigy. And he starts cussing out Shoto for having a good childhood. Play the scene.
You had every advantage! The best training! An ideal body! Yet you depend on others! You're a spoiled little brat who never bothered to reach his full potential!
I should probably add in that he fights Shoto. Shoto kind of half defeats him. Then he's like passed out, wakes back up, and ready to go all over again before he's teleported away. Anyways, at one point, Toya does get teleported to his dad, and he starts to burn so hot that other countries start to have weather changes because of him. He's that hot. And he's still alive. He's just very hot. The scene was really sad because Endeavor can't even like fight him. He starts to run from him to take him away from all the other fighters because he can see that he's about to blow up. And then even after he's ran away, when like Toya grabs him, he just holds him, and it's really sad. He just kind of holds his son and like begs him to stop. He can't bite him, which made me really sad. And keep in mind at this point, Endeavor's like literally lost an arm because he just saw the big bad of the show. So he's in a very delicate position, and he's like begging him to stop. And he's not. He's just cussing him out. Toya's looking at him, he's laughing, just going crazy. And at one point, his mom, his brother, and his sister all try to use their ice powers to stop him. And bro, just play the scene.
No! No!
My boy. I'm so sorry.
I don't know who this voice actor is, but he needed to have won something. Anyway, Toya ends up jumping in last minute and like using his ice and stopping him finally. Did I say Toya or Shoto? I can't remember. Shoto ends up jumping in and using Ice Quit to stop him. Toya's like on the ground. He's like fully messed up. And he's still there like, I hate you. I hate all of you. Hate the family. He's lost his mind. He's just trying shit. And Endeavor's like crying, telling him to let it all out. He ends up in a life machine, which is really sad because he's complete. He can't move. He's burned to insane levels. And there's like a final scene where his brother where Shoto comes to see him, and Shoto asks him what his favorite food is, and look how excited he gets.
Soba. That's mine too.
Oh, and then he starts crying, and he's all like, Shoto, forgive me. And it's really sad, and you can kind of see that he's starting to have like he's realizing what he's done. But unfortunately, I think he dies. Let me check. Oh god, he dies off screen. Yeah, my baby girl. I'm gonna break this down before I get into it because I do want to talk about the fact that in this scene specifically, when Toya's fighting Shoto, in that scene though, he calls out Shoto for having friends to help him, and he starts to cuss out Shoto for relying so heavily on others. I think Toya finds so much strength in the fact that he became who he is alone. He trained alone and got better alone, and he, in his mind, became more powerful than anyone else alone. Just like Endeavor. Oh my god. Like him. On my quest to find a like him edit, I found this edit instead.
Not your fault! Who filled my head with dreams? Who drove me to train until my bones cracked? Who denied me my destiny?
So sad. And it's true. Like, not only does he have his dad's anger issues and mimic a lot of him, like his training was, like I said, just watching his dad's YouTube videos, but it wasn't just copying him that was important. It was making it better, destroying his body to a level that he had to like staple himself together. It's insane. And not only did he push himself to the brink of collapse physically, but also mentally. He has a lot of mental health issues. And I know he says he feels nothing. I don't think that's true. I think that Toya has so much suppressed rage, he just doesn't know what to do with it. His life was burned away from him, literally. He spent 3 years in a coma. And his first thought, like I said, was to apologize to his mom. Like, he didn't wake up evil and changed, and he was so emotional. And it's like when he came home and saw his dad, his heart kind of broke because nothing had changed. I think he thought his dad would have changed and maybe he would have realized the fault in his ways. I would have, if it was my dad, I would have expected a 360, like stop doing hero work and like, mourn in a corner, like your eldest child is dead. But he's fine. He's acting exactly the same. In fact, he's worse with Shoto. He tortured Shoto. He not only did he like completely isolate him from his siblings, he trained him to a point of like, I'm gonna be the share of you, and like, oh, if you can't handle this, how are you gonna be number one hero? He's 4. Toya was never physically harmed by his dad from what we saw, but then I know a lot of people bring this point up because when people are defending Toya or Darby, a lot of other people make the point of, well, Shoto was tortured and he didn't become like that. Like, Toya hasn't really got a bad backstory. The day that Toya goes home and sees his family, I think that something kind of breaks in him. He says it himself that it's on that day that Shoto died and Darby was born. And I think that the worst thing of it all was just the abandonment from his father. But what's crazy is that even though through all his shit about killing in Shoto and destroying Endeavor, all he really wanted was his father's acknowledgement, and he doesn't hide that. It's not like written between the lines. He says it multiple times. Look at me, Endeavor. Watch me, Dad. Look what I'm doing now. And he says Endeavor a lot specifically. Endeavor the hero, not his father. I think he wants that acknowledgement from the person he wanted to be like most in the world, the person that he wanted to surpass the most. And he lets it consume him. He lets it destroy him, not only mentally but physically as well. He practices quirk to the point of destruction. He kept going in complete solitude, thinking of nothing but his revenge on Endeavor. And how can you expect him to stop? How can you expect him to change? I think when we were watching it, we all hoped he will. When he fights Endeavor and his family are burning alive to help him, trying to stop him, begging him to stop. And you can see that he does feel it. He's upset. The way he begs his mom to stop and get back so he doesn't hurt her, he is feeling it. He's powerless. And that's what's so mad about it. He has no control over himself now because he's gone too far. He recognizes his family. He sees what they're doing. But what do they see? They don't see Toya. They see a villain burning everything to the ground. And he could have stopped it. At one point, he could have gone home. He could have gone to see his mom. He could have stepped into his dad and said something and made a change or tried. Him being a child at the same time, it's a good point, and it's something to consider. But I just think there's so many other choices that he could have made and he didn't. He looks at Shoto like an enemy, like he and Shoto are the same, and like if he kills Shoto, then he'll destroy Endeavor's legacy and all his hope and all his joy, and more importantly, he'll make the number one hero suffer. But that's not the case because Shoto couldn't be more different than Toya. This is what's crazy. Shoto never wanted to be a hero. He wanted to play with his siblings. He literally begged his mom to make his dad stop. She didn't. Or she couldn't, depending on how you want to look at the situation. But no. Ray was in a pretty shit situation. Yeah, she couldn't stop him in reality. Shoto refused to use his fire quirk out of spite for the first like 2 seasons. He wouldn't be his father and he wouldn't become this like perfect prodigy, this perfect mix of ice and fire that his father wanted so badly. And at one point when he does use his fire quirk, he uses it for himself. I'm going to show you the scene because I love the scene.
I refuse to use my left side. It's yours! Your quirk, not his!
It's beautiful. Shoto refuses to be his father's perfect child. But that's all that Toya wanted. He just wanted his dad's approval. He just wanted that recognition. Toya doesn't care about the quirk. He doesn't care about being stronger for himself or his true ability. He was doing what he was doing to prove something to Endeavor. And that's where he went so wrong. How can you have control over a life that you refuse to live for yourself? At one point, Toya does tell Endeavor that he was worried he was going to die. And what's great, it's not like, oh, I was worried because my dad's going to die and I'm never going to speak to him again. He goes, I was worried because that means that he didn't say this, but basically everything that he had done for 10 years, if Endeavor would have died in that minute, it would have been for nothing. It's crazy. And even at the end, he lets himself get to this ridiculous burning point because his goal was very simple. I will make Endeavor suffer, I will kill him, and then Darby can die. And apparently, even the outfit he wears to the final fight is traditional Japanese funeral attire. He came ready. He came ready. And this is a problem about living for anyone but yourself, especially if you're living for someone else's approval. Because if it's not exactly what you wanted in your head and the person isn't admiring you or speaking to you the way that you wanted them to, you could kill yourself trying to get better and it wouldn't change anything. And it would literally destroy you because if you're not getting what you wanted from it, then you've done it for nothing. If you're working out to approve other people and other people are like, well, your body could be thinner, but you have pushed yourself to the point of exhaustion, you did it for nothing in your mind because what you wanted from the thing that you did is not what you got. Right, I'm chatting shit now. But this whole thing with Endeavor and Toya, it's one of my favorite parallels of Toya and Tai Lung specifically because this supposed betrayal of their mentors, their fathers, it's heartbreaking, but also like, okay, Shifu and Endeavor have drilled it into their heads that like this is it, that nothing comes after this, nothing else matters. This goal is all that matters. And then suddenly, actually, nah, you can't do this. You can't do it. Sorry. And keep in mind the importance of the dream or the mission is a better word for it. Better word for it. That doesn't dissolve. The world still needs a dragon warrior, and the world still needs a number one hero. So therefore, the problem is with them. They aren't good enough and they cannot accept that. And I would argue they can't even fathom it. And more than that, I don't think they believe it, which is why they try so hard to prove it. Toya tries to kill Shoto to prove that he's better than the boy that was trained to be the best. Tai Lung attempts to overpower Master Oogway, and then he goes to fight Po, the chosen Dragon Warrior, but both of them fail. They're both destroyed by those who were destined to be greater for reasons that they cannot fathom. There was no support, no understanding of what they're being asked to walk away from. Endeavor has Shoto, who's perfect, cold, and hot, and moves on to torturing him. Shifu then has Tigress first, and then the rest of the five. Neither of them really accept responsibility for their actions. They both kind of just sit. Okay, well, Endeavor thinks that Toya's dead, so I'll give it to him. But Shifu kind of sits with this thing of like, oh, my student's in a prison, like that sucks, and I'm never gonna love anyone else. And then like the same thing doesn't happen to them. They don't. Endeavor can't at first, but Shifu doesn't acknowledge kind of what he's done. There's no sort of recognition for the years that Tai Lung spent suffering for this one dream that was literally taken away by the shake of a head. That was it. Dream gone, life dead, no point. And it's the same for Darby. It's not the same for Darby. It's not. I'm sorry. I need to stop calling him Darby. Toya. I know Darby is his villain name and he was a villain at this point, but he was never a villain to me. He should have been though, because he was actually the first character to ever kill someone on screen, which I feel like tells you a lot about him. Anyway, his dad does tell him to stop training because he's hurting himself. And I will give Endeavor that much. But he drove this shit into the mind of like a 5-year-old for his whole life. Like, Toya never really had any other friends. He really did isolate himself because the other kids didn't understand. Like, everyone, and throughout the show, everyone wanted to be a number one hero. Everyone wanted to save the world. But what Toya wanted was so much deeper than that. It wasn't about being number one. It was just he needed to be the best. Like there was nothing else that mattered, and they don't get it. And he literally goes, "I can't shoot with them. They don't get it. Like they don't understand what it's like to be like this." But there's a point where Toya does try to kill Shoto. He tries to burn him, and Endeavor responds by shouting at his wife, and then says, "I'm going out." He's a shit guy. Don't get me wrong though. Both Shifu and Endeavor, they do eventually accept their faults, and again, it's only when they're actually faced with what they've done. When Tai Lung has Shifu on his knees, he begs for forgiveness, not for mercy or to be spared or for him to like leave the valley and all the innocents alone. He just wanted his son to know he was sorry. And even Endeavor, when he was preparing for the final fight with All For One, who's like the big bad, Darby runs up on him by surprise. Endeavor is on a path of forgiveness at this point, and I do have to say, I did forgive Endeavor by the end. He genuinely was atoning for his actions with every single step that he took, and he was such a he starts the show as being this really big, like fearless, kind of scary giant. He's more like a big villain that does the right thing sometimes. But by the end of the show, he's a broken man. He can't walk, he can't stand, he's missing an arm, he cries every 5 minutes. Like I'm not going to say he's pathetic, but he's very different. Like he's not the same character in the slightest. He does end up begging Toya for forgiveness on multiple occasions. He first begs him to stop hurting his family, but Toya can't. And it's like I said earlier, it's just too late. And I like that with Toya, it's a very physical depiction of what he's feeling inside of his head. Like the way that he looks, this feeling of hatred and hopelessness and anger, it was burning away at him from the inside, and those scars show so vividly on his outside. Like I said, that stuff on he's being stapled back together to keep him together. Kind of like how his anger is the only thing keeping him alive. There's a point in the show, I can't remember specifically, but there's a doctor that talks about the fact that like what Toya went through and how his body was destroyed and how he's destroyed it even more after. There's only one thing keeping that guy going, and it's either like it's a very specific and clear, powerful cause that keeps him going, and it's his hatred for his dad, and it's this need to defeat him, which is crazy. What do you mean that's the only thing keeping you alive? And Tai Lung's imprisonment is also such an amazing kind of reflection of his inner mind as well. He's restricted to a point where he can't move, and he's put into that box by others. This kind of obsession, I guess they call it a dream, but I would call it an obsession. It genuinely has paralyzed him. And for Toya, after Shoto was defeated, Endeavor's on his knees with him, telling him, like, let your anger out, like, take it out on me, please forgive me. He still can't let go. And like I said to you before, if you watch the scene, it looks like he's losing his mind. And I think it's because he can't let go. What has he got if not his anger? He even starts to say, like, screw, like, I hate the whole family. I hate myself. Like he's destroyed. He's broken. In his mind he should be dead. Now what? Where do I go from here? If he hasn't got his anger, if not his obsessive need to be better, then what is he? And it's the same for Tai Lung. If he's not the Dragon Warrior, he's nothing. And unfortunately, Tai Lung's not the Dragon Warrior, and Toya's not the best, and he's not going to surpass Endeavor, and he's not going to do any of those things. So if that means that there's nothing else, unfortunately, that means they're nothing. And they could have chosen a different path. It's the reason that I love these kind of characters, because I guess you can use them as examples of what it is that you'll become. Anger and rage and hopelessness, despair they're like fire. And if you let them, they will consume you. They will burn everything that you love and everything that is around you. Because it's not, those kind of feelings don't just stay inside of you. They show out, they come out. Whether you want them to or not, they will. They're uncontrollable. The only way to get better is to let go, to move on. Speaking of moving on, let's move on to hear a quick word from our sponsor. I don't have a sponsor. Someone sponsor me. I'm just joking. Let's get back on track. Now we're going to move on to acceptance. The first character that woke me up to the reality of life is none other than the legend himself. Wait. I have a mic. Wait. I hope I'm still in frame because I moved. Anyway, Mike Wazowski is from a movie called Monsters, Inc. Monsters, Inc. is set in a world where monsters are employed to scare little kids, and they use the scream to create energy. I am going to be focusing on Mike in the sequel film, which is Monsters University. Technically a prequel because it is set, I think, like 15 years before the original. Anyway, we follow the story of Mike starting university where he trains to become a scarer. He meets Sully, who is like his best friend in Monsters, Inc., but they are kind of ops in Monsters University. Anyway, Mike is on it. He works very, very hard. He tries very hard to be the best scarer, pass all the exams, and just be incredible. Sully is a Nepo baby. He looks scary, and that's kind of the only thing he goes off of. He doesn't really learn. He doesn't pay attention in class. He just wants to like join the sorority and not care about anything else. Basically, at the end of each semester, there's a big exam, and you have to pass the exam. The exam is a scare simulator. Mike and Sully end up having like a raw measuring contest in the middle of the exam, and they end up knocking over a canister that belonged to this very big scary monster that is the dean of the school. Can I also say though, can you imagine her coming to your bedroom at night? The amount of money she must have made in her career. Oh my god. Anyway, the dean says that Mike isn't scary and Sully doesn't know anything about scaring, and he's not passionate enough. She kicks them both out of the scaring program. They're both very pissed and they have to like make canisters, scream canisters. But they want a chance to get back in, so they enter the scare games with this very adorable little group called Uzma Kappa. They're not very scary, bless them. They do get made fun of a lot. And Mike, to start off, just gets them all to copy him. He starts off very arrogant and very ignorant, and a bit too cocky, I would say. So he basically just gets them all to copy him, which through the first round, he doesn't even remember his team. Him and Sully just start like having their own race, and they only win because another team was cheating. In the second round, they win because of pure luck. His team actually aren't useless, and they were able to make it through because they were all being quite clever, and they did a bit of improvisation. Mike eventually has like a realization, and he takes the gang to the scare floor and sees how they're all passionate about scaring, and decides like, this is it. Like, I'm going to teach them to their strengths, and we're all going to be amazing. And they all do very, very well. They end up getting to the last round, which is a scare simulator. The night before the last game, Sully is trying to help Mike, so he's teaching him how to roar and stuff like that. Mike's all like, yeah, like, I did really well. And Sully's like, yeah, you did really well. Yeah, this does become relevant. Anyway, everyone's doing really well. Everyone's scaring the little dummy thing. And Mike ends up going last because Sully tells him to go last. And everyone's scaring, and it's really, really close. And then Mike's turn, they're about to win. And he's just sick. And he like it makes it go all the way to the top. And they win. And it's great. And it's crazy. And yay. That was terrible English. Turns out that Sully changed the scare level on the machine. So he basically cheated. Mike runs off to the human world to kind of prove that he is scary. And yeah. Sully runs after him, and now they're both stuck in the human world because the dean locks the door and the feds in the human world are looking for them because apparently there's a bear running around. Mike and Sully have like a really deep heart-to-heart, which I will dive into much later because I love that. Mike then directs Sully. They scare the shit out of some adults and they end up going home. They do both get kicked out of Monsters University, obviously, but they get jobs in the mailroom at Monsters, Inc. They become the best scarers at Monsters, Inc. And at the end of Monsters, Inc., after the plot of the film, they do actually end up owning the factory, and they decide to make kids laugh instead of scream because laughing actually makes more energy. Mike's whole arc is so beautiful, and I love it so much because of its realism. He spends his whole life, since quite literally age like 4, wanting to be a scarer. He hasn't thought about anything else. He works his ass off and gets to be one of the biggest scare schools in the world. He studied like mad for every test. He never took a day off, never took a break, never looked at anything that wasn't going to help him become a scarer. Anything that was going to take him away from his dream, not happening. Problem is, he isn't scary. I mean, look at him. He's cuddly and small, but he's just not scary. And I guess it is subjective because I'm sure there's a kid in the world that if you put Mike in front of him, they would get very scared. But if you look at the Monsters Inc. world as kind of like a culture or like a society, in his world, scary is kind of big and vicious and aggressive looking. They're all different, like some are slim, big, whatever, but they all have that same kind of vibe. Yeah. The film does such a good job because it's so insane seeing him next to Sully, who is his complete opposite. Mike is small, awkward, very strict, very forward, let's say. Sully's very big and chill and very confident, laid back. He just looks scarier. Sully gets the respect of his peers before he ever needs to prove himself, and Mike gets kicked out before he gets a chance to. His whole life has been like that. And I love it because he doesn't care. Like, there was one scarer at the start of the film that said, you know what, not bad, kid, because he ended up sneaking. Why didn't I say this at the start? He ends up at the start of the film. He ends up sneaking through one of the doors onto the scare floor, and then one of the scarers is like, "Oh, I didn't see you in there. Like, well done, you did really good." And that kind of ignited something in him. Someone believed in him, and he spent the rest of his life believing in himself. And what's sad is, unlike our I'm not going to call them villains, but unlike our villains, I did call them villains. Anyway, Mike doesn't lack for self-worth, and or maybe it's something he doesn't show. No, I don't think so. I don't think you're able to get all the way to like Monsters University by faking this self-belief. Like, he really did believe he was going to be a scarer. And at first, I do think it was his ignorance that almost stole his dream from him because he refused to help the team be who they were. But he adapts, he changes his technique, he works with them, he takes Sully's advice and he tries his best to get better. He doesn't take it as an insult. He's never offended. He's always looking for the opportunity to grow and get better. I really, really love that about him. He will be a scarer. And at that scene in the end, he says it himself that he worked harder than everyone, but it wasn't enough because the fact is the fact. And at first, he couldn't accept it. He does something completely reckless. He breaks every law. He uses an untested door and goes to the human world, where, just like every other time he's tried to be scary in his life, he was laughed at. It's at that moment, in my favorite scene in the world, Mike kind of looks at himself the way that everyone else does. I think he finally sees himself from more of a technical point of view and realizes it's not for him. And then, after what he's just done as well, he's definitely never going to be a scarer. The scene is my favorite thing in the whole world because when he says,
I did everything right. I wanted it more than anyone. And I thought if I wanted it enough, I could show everybody that Mike Wazowski is something special. And I'm just not.
sometimes, unfortunately, it is just as simple as that. You're just not. And then I think it's at those kind of points that you learn a lot about yourselves as a person. When you're in your own head with your own negative thoughts, they will drown you. Like, for example, Darby and Tai Lung, they both are kept in solitude. They focus on their revenge. They don't let anyone else in, and they refuse help when it is offered. Sully is there with Mike. This is where it comes to a little bit of different, and he does comfort him, not by saying like, "Oh, bless you," and da da da, but it's more of like he has his own moment of weakness, and through their hurt, they do bond. And it's Sully that kind of reminds Mike that he was the one that got Uzma Kappa through the scare games in the first place. That he made Sully a version of himself that he never thought he could be. That he was great, that he did have his own strengths, that he just had to recognize them. But this is where it becomes important. Sully can't pick Mike up and carry him through life. He can't. But sometimes you do need that moment of recognition. It's at that moment that it goes down to Mike. Is he going to sit there and despair and choose to just stay where he is and collapse and just implode on himself? Or does he get up? And he does. He listens to what Sully says and he realizes, well, shit, you know what? You're right. And because even when I'm saying all these things about Uzma Kappa, he can still sit there and be like, nah, wasn't me. Like, no. Like, just have that mindset of no. He doesn't. he's like, you know what, you might have a point. Like, I have done all these things. Like, I can do things. I'm capable of so much. And he shows that to us just after he makes his whole plan to scare the adults. He builds all the tension. He trips them over to get them really nervous. And then Sully just does a big ass roar, really. Which I love Sully, but he was not the mastermind behind that. That was genuinely Mike. And when he comes home, he is ready to move on. He literally said, like, he's ready to figure out other things. And again, Sully kind of pulls him and says, well, you know, you are amazing. And he reminds him, like, look, well done for what you did. And Mike and Sully, they do stay together and they become best friends and they become mailmen. And what I do love is, even though Mike is nowhere near where he wants to be in his life, he's mailman. Scarer up here, mailman down here. He still is able to find joy and find happiness on this path with his friend. I love the fact that he never diminishes the part of himself that wants to aim high, that wants to do really well. And if you look at it at the end, he ends up owning a whole company. Like, do you see what I mean? There's such a beautiful lesson to learn there, because life can be beautiful and you can find joy and you can find success down a completely different path. What matters is how you approach the path, how you think about it, how your mind chooses to see the obstacle. Like, is it a brick wall or is it a door that you just need to push open? My notes are saying to show you a diagram, but I don't have the diagram with me, so we're just going to move on to the next one. Sorry. The option for the second example of acceptance was very difficult, because at first I couldn't think of anyone, and then I had like 3 different examples. So my 2 honorable mentions are going to be Emmett from the Lego movie and Goob from Meet the Robinsons. Emmett, I love Emmett. I just think he's an amazing character. I love the Lego movie. I thought it was incredible, so unique, such a good film. And then Goob, Meet the Robinsons is one. I don't know if you can see it on my wall. I don't think you can see that high. But Meet the Robinsons is genuinely top 3 favorite Disney movies of all time. You're going to hear that a lot. There will become a point in my career that someone's going to say, well, you've already said 3 different movies and none of them were the same 3 that you said were in your top 3. I am bipolar depending on the time of the day. Right now, Meet the Robinsons is my top 3. Next week, it might be my favorite. The week after, it could be top 10. I don't know what to tell you, except I have a lot of love to give, okay? I love a lot of things. If you do think of any other honorable mentions, please do just chuck them in the comments, because I genuinely couldn't get past those 3 characters. I couldn't think of anyone else. But I know there's a lot more stories out there. I just can't think about them. So chuck them in. Thank you. Anyway, I decided to give the finale to the best redemption arc slash just the best character ever written, maybe, I think, in all of kind of history. I don't know if you can guess who I'm talking about just yet. If you've watched it, you've watched it. If you haven't watched it, you hate yourself and you need to improve your life. The best redemption arc of all time goes to my baby girl, Zuko.
You've always thrown everything you could at me. Well, I can take it, and now I can give it back.
I have so many Zuko edits saved. I just decided to use that one because the sound is crazy. Do you want to see another one?
I'm angry at myself.
It's time for you to look inward.
Oh my god. Zuko, man. I love Zuko. I love talking about Zuko. Bro, oh my god. Zuko is the main character from a show called Avatar The Last Airbender. I'm rewatching Avatar so I can break it down for you all, because we're going to do a series on Avatar. But anyway, the show is set in a world where almost everyone has one of 4 elements, either earth, fire, water, or air. The world kind of got separated into nations. You've got the Fire Nation, you've got the South and the North water tribes, and then you've got the Earth Kingdom. The air nomads did have temples that were like North, South, East, and West. But basically, the Fire Nation one day decided that they were the most powerful nation, and they decided to just start like taking over the world, and they went to war with everyone. The only person that was strong enough to really defeat the Fire Lord or defeat the Fire Nation is the Avatar, master of all 4 elements. Sorry, master of all 4 elements, who's destined to defeat the Fire Lord and save the world. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. The Fire Nation knew that the Avatar was going to be an airbender, so they wiped out all the airbenders. Genocide, they are all dead. Except the Avatar, who was an 11-year-old boy who did run away and got stuck in some ice. He was discovered 100 years later by a waterbender called Katara and her older brother. And they end up going on like this journey of learning all the elements and getting strong and defeating the Fire Lord ultimately to stop the 100-year war that had been going on. Zuko! We're going to go to Zuko's backstory chronologically. He is the son of the Fire Lord. When Zuko was very young, his mom disappeared, and he was just raised with his sister Azula. No, I'm gonna add lore actually because it does become quite relevant. His mom disappeared because she poisoned the Fire Lord, who was Zuko's grandfather. Zuko's dad, who's called Ozai, but this thing keeps autocorrecting it to Ozzy, so we're just gonna call him Ozzy, okay? So Zuko's mom poisoned his grandfather so that Ozzy could be the Fire Lord. He had to do this because Ozzy was second in line, so he wasn't supposed to be the Fire Lord. His brother Iroh was supposed to be the Fire Lord, but Iroh's son died, and so he ended up like abandoning war and like was just really upset mourning his son. And so Ozzy went up to his dad and was like, "Your son's kind of like a pussy, and he should not be ruling anything, and he shouldn't be like the Fire Lord. I should be Fire Lord instead, don't you think?" And his dad, like his Zuko's grandfather, was really pissed off, and he was like, "That's my son, and my grandson just died, and this is the shit that you're saying to me. So as punishment, you need to now go and kill your son so you can understand how it feels." And Ozai was gonna do it. He didn't give a shit. He did not care about Zuko in the slightest. He said, "Okay, cool, I'm on my way." Zuko's mom was like, "No, look, don't kill my son. I'll poison your dad and he'll die, and we'll fake a thing that says like, yeah, my son Ozai can be Fire Lord." And that's what they did. They just lied. They were like, "Yeah, my dad's final dying wish was that I become Fire Lord." And Iroh was really sad, and he just didn't fight against it. Like he didn't care. He was like, "Yeah, whatever, man. My son's dead." And Iroh becomes like this really peace-loving kind of guy, which is beautiful. Anyway, back to the show now. When he's 13, he goes to a meeting with his dad where some random general suggests that like they should use new recruits to basically be sacrificed so that they can win a battle against some earthbenders. Zuko objects to this and he's like, those men are putting their lives on the line. How could you? And the general's really pissed off. And so he calls for an Agni Kai, which is like a fight to the death, essentially. And he was like, "I want an Agni Kai with you. You've disrespected me." And then Zuko's like, "Cool, let's fight." When he goes to the fight, it's not the general. He has to fight his own dad. And he has to fight his dad because his dad's all like, "You disrespected him in my throne room, so you've disrespected me." And Zuko, 13-year-old Zuko, it like collapses to his knees. He's like, "No, dad, like, please, I don't want to fight you. I'm not going to fight you, father. Like, please forgive me. I'm your loyal son." Anyway, he's begging his dad not to fight him, and his dad's all like, "I'm gonna do this to teach you respect." And he burns his face. It's wrong. It's wrong. He's a babby. Anyway, so he burns up all his face, and then he gets banished. He gets kicked out of the Fire Nation, and they're like, "You can come back if you find the Avatar," which is a joke because no one's found the Avatar. No one's ever gonna find the Avatar, as far as they're concerned. The show starts 3 years after that event, so Zuko is now 16, and he does find the Avatar. I think like 3 episodes in, but then he gets battered by the Avatar's flying bison. I'm trying to keep this to stuff that's relevant, so I'm going through 3 seasons worth of content here, and they've got like 30 episodes each, so just stay with me. He goes looking for the Avatar again, and some general called Zhang, who's like the biggest piece of shit ever, he ends up kidnapping Aang, and Zuko dresses up as the Blue Spirit to free Aang from the general, and Aang leaves, and Zuko goes back to his little ship. And then at the end of season 1, Aang is having a big fight with the Fire Nation. I remember he's banished, so Zuko is not technically part of the Fire Nation. Zuko sneaks in, and like when Aang's really powerless and kind of asleep, he kidnaps him and takes him to a cave. He has no plan. The Avatar's friends do find him. They do kind of help Zuko. They just drop him off somewhere that he's not going to freeze to death. His uncle finds him, and eventually they go on the run because he's been banished. And now General Zhao, he's all like, "Oh, he betrayed the Fire Nation. Like, we're against him." And his sister Azula, who is insanely powerful. Azula needs a backstory, but she's not getting one. Azula's crazy powerful, and her job is now to hunt down Zuko. So him and his uncle hide out in the Earth Kingdom as poor refugees. They've got no food and no water. At one point, I can't remember why, but Zuko does go off on his own. In the episode where he's by himself, Zuko alone, he refuses to steal from a pregnant woman, even though he's starving. He meets a little kid and helps his village who are being abused by the Earth Kingdom army, because that's injustice. That's important that I mentioned that. He teaches the kid how to fight. The kid does try to fight, and he gets kidnapped, and I don't know. But Zuko ends up coming back to save the kid, and he uses his firebending, and then everyone finds out that, oh, he's Zuko, and he does this really cute speech. Anyway, eventually he finds his uncle again, and they run away to a place called Ba Sing Se, where the Avatar's bison has been captured by the corrupted government. So now Zuko and Iroh and the Avatar, they're all in the same city. But they don't know it, bless them. So while Zuko and Iroh are in Ba Sing Se, his uncle Iroh, he opens up a tea shop, and they serve tea. Zuko then finds out that the Avatar's bison has been captured. He ends up finding the Avatar's bison. I don't remember how, but he does. He finds the bison and he's about to kidnap him, and then Uncle Iroh stops him, and after that commences maybe 3 minutes of the greatest dialogue I have ever had the pleasure of hearing in my life. Ultimately, he decides not to kidnap the bison, and he gets really ill. Like, he collapses from this thought of doing the right thing. And he wakes up though, and he's happy, he's healthy. He goes on a cheeky date. He works at the tea shop with his uncle. He's smiling, which is a very rare thing for Zuko, and he experiences joy for like 5 days. Then he gets stuck in a cave with a girl called Katara because his sister finds him and chucks him in. And they have a really, really cute heart-to-heart, and they bond over the fact that both their moms are dead. Zuko's mom's not dead, but he doesn't know that. Anyway, his sister does show up, and she's all like, let's defeat the Avatar together, and like, you know, your dad's gonna love you. And he betrays uncle. Bro, look at his face, man. Oh my god. Anyway, at the end of this, Aang does get away, but everyone thinks that he's dead because he gets like shocked with lightning from Azula. He goes home. He's a prince again. He's kind of loved by he's not loved, but he's tolerated by his dad. He's, you know, got everything he ever wanted. He does end up going and talking to his uncle secretly because at this point Zuko has a lot of anger and he just wants some guidance, and he gets blanked. His uncle's rotting in a cell, by the way, rotting in a cell. And he just gets blanked, and he starts going off every time he comes there. He just starts screaming at his uncle. He's like, "You're crazy! You should be sleeping in a gutter. Like, you're a piece of shit." Da, da, da. He goes to an island with his girl May and spends the whole time just kind of moving mad for no reason. He's really aggressive, and I didn't like May, so I'm gonna say she's a problem. But he has some inner things to work with, so she's not the complete problem. He ends up going to his old family beach house. He finds pictures of his mom and dad, and he burns them. He goes on to have a breakdown where he talks about being angry. And it ends up just because he's angry at himself. He's angry at the fact that he doesn't know right or wrong anymore. When he gets home, he does end up doing a little bit of history research. His great-grandfather on his dad's side, Sozin, he was the one that started the 100-Year War. But his great-grandfather on his mom's side was the Avatar. You got Avatar Roku on one side and Fire Lord Sozin on the other side. So literally, genuinely, good and evil are both inside of him. And Iroh does end up talking to him and explaining to him, like, look, this is your lineage. This is why you struggle so much with choosing between good and bad. After he talks to his uncle, he makes a choice. There ends up being an eclipse where the firebenders lose their bending for like 2 or 3 minutes, and the Avatar tries to attack at that point to defeat Fire Lord Ozai. Zuko ends up using this time to go and talk to his dad, and he starts telling him like what you did was cruel and it was wrong, and that the Fire Nation is abusing its power. And he ends up telling his dad like, yeah, I'm leaving. He redirects lightning, which is amazing, really, really incredible, because redirecting lightning is something that's very hard to do. And so his dad tries to shoot him with lightning, and he redirects it. Beautiful. He ends up leaving, and he goes to help his uncle first, but his uncle's already broke out because Dragon of the West. Anyway, he finds the Avatar and his friends, and he asks to join them. They say no, obviously. He keeps trying to convince them, and he's like, at one point he's like, will you just take me as your prisoner? And they're like, we don't want you here, go away. And it's really sad, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's by himself. At one point an assassin comes and attacks them, an assassin that Zuko sent a few weeks before. But anyway, he does help them, and they let him stay like kind of at a distance. He does have some really beautiful side stories where he gains their trust. With Katara, he ends up helping her find her mother's killer. Sokka, he helps them break their dad out of prison. Zuko was supposed to be teaching Aang how to use firebending, but Zuko's firebending has stopped working, so they go to find the original source of firebending, and they learn that it's from like dragons and shit, and they get the firebending back, but in a much more beautiful way. And the reason that his firebending stopped working was because he was always using it out of anger and resentment, and because he didn't have as much anger and resentment anymore, his power was very weak. But because he learned to use firebending at its natural, healthy, happy source, he was more powerful. And all of them are friends, and it's really cute. Okay, season 3 was really, really cute. Anyway, the time is coming towards the big fight where the Avatar has to face the Fire Lord, who starts calling himself the Phoenix Lord, and then Azula becomes the Fire Lord, and she's losing her mind. This video isn't about her, but she is genuinely mental breakdown, seeing her dead mom in mirrors. Her mom's not dead, she's just gone. But seeing her mom in mirrors, like, she's having a breakdown. Am I missing anything out? I feel like I'm missing stuff out, but I don't have time for this. Anyway, Aang goes missing before the big fight, and the gang try to go find him. They end up finding Uncle Iroh instead, who is with a gang of old people called the White Lotus, who are like the coolest. This isn't relevant. They end up finding the White Lotus, and Zuko faces his uncle, and it's so sad. He like sits outside his tent for hours. He doesn't know how to talk to him or what to say, and he's really, really afraid that his uncle's just not going to forgive him. He ends up going inside and he just breaks down crying, begs for forgiveness, and his uncle. Watch the scene. We're watching the scene.
I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but
I can't. Anyway, he decides that he can't help Aang in the fight against his dad, and he needs to help the fight against his sister, so the Fire Nation can have a fresh, healthy leader. Anyway, Aang fights Phoenix Lord and he wins. Zuko fights his insane sister. Azula tries to strike Katara with lightning. He jumps in the way, so he gets struck with the lightning, and then Katara ends up stopping Azula herself, which is amazing. We love Katara. She finishes the fight with Azula. He becomes the Fire Lord. Everyone is happily ever after. And as far as we see in Legend of Korra, which is set I think like 50 years later, he seems happy. He's raised his daughter. She's ruling the Fire Nation. He's chilling. The movie hasn't been released yet. I know there's a movie coming out. The movie hasn't been released, so that's all the kind of lore that I've got to go on. There is books that in the books, like, he finds his mom. Happy ending. I'm not joking when I tell you that this is the third time I am filming this portion of the video. I am going to lose my mind. My mic's battery died as well, so I've had to change my mic. I'm just having a lot of issues with my first ever video, and I started this being very nervous of like, oh my god, what am I gonna say and how's my voice gonna sound? I don't care. I am getting this over and done with. This is my Obito microphone. So Zuko starts his story as a 16. I filmed this 3 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. Please. Okay. Zuko starts his story as a 16-year-old who is full of rage, a lot of anger, hatred, but more importantly, he has a very twisted sense of self and a very twisted idea of who he actually is. I can hear Ira in my head. Zuko's of the Fire Nation. The Fire Nation is a nation built on anger, aggression, just pure pride and violence, I'll be honest. And Zuko isn't like that. At heart, he's a really good person. He's kind. He stands up for injustice. And it's sad because he believes that he should be like everyone else, ruthless and cruel, and because that's who he is. That's what he takes his pride from, being Fire Nation and being that. Even though, like I said, that's not who he is. And I think that who you truly are just come out when you think people aren't looking. So like the fact that he wouldn't steal from a pregnant woman. He was starving. He really did need it. Chose not to because there was someone less fortunate than him or someone that needed it more. And it's just not who he was. Like, he's not that kind of like selfish person. And it's upsetting because it's not who he's supposed to be. So he spends his whole life burying these feelings. His hunt for the Avatar is the only thing that kind of keeps him going. And for him, he fixates on it because at the end of it, he'll finally get what he wants, like his father, his home, his title, his honor. And it's really weird when you think about it because his idea of honor is, I'm going to kidnap an 11-year-old and take him to my dad, and then my dad's going to kill him. And then, like, no one can ever defeat him, and then we'll just torture the rest of the world. Yay. Like, do you see what I mean? Like, that is a very twisted sense of honor. But in reality, again, this idea of honor comes from what the Fire Nation considers honorable: to serve your country, to serve your father, and more importantly, from a child's perspective, to just do what your dad's telling you to do, basically, to do what's going to make your dad happy. And that's all he cares about, which is really sad. Zuko's bigger changes do happen towards the end of the show. The first one being when his uncle confronts him in the cell. He asks him, is this your destiny, or is it a destiny that someone else has tried to force on you? And I love it because in that moment, Iroh's kind of coddled Zuko his whole life. Like, he's the first person to call him Prince Zuko. Even when they were refugees, he would still call him like Prince Zuko. Like, he had so much love for him, and he has this. There's this scene, one of my favorite scenes, where Zuko says that there's no hope for him, and Iroh like grabs him, and he just looks terrified. And he's like, "No, Zuko, you can't give in to despair because you'll become the lowest version of yourself. You can't ever give up on yourself." And I love it because he just looks so terrified at the thought of Zuko giving up on himself, and it's so beautiful. But after, like I say, coddling him his whole life, he finally has this conversation with him where he's like, you need to look at yourself and decide who you are. And Zuko, I don't think, can handle being confronted like that. He literally gets physically ill. He goes in a coma. He just sleeps for days. He has nightmare. He had a nightmare where he woke up and he was the Avatar. He was bold. He also has another dream where he has like a red and blue snake dragon thing, and one of them has his sister's voice. The red one has his sister's voice, and the blue one has his brother's voice, from what I can remember. They're both whispering different things, like his sister's saying like, slip away, blah blah blah. His uncle said that no, keep fighting, stay strong. And obviously we then find out that Zuko has always had evil and good fighting inside of him, because his one side, his great grandfather, was the Avatar, and the other side, he's Fire Lord Sozin, who started the 100-Year War, which is so significant. And he chooses Iroh, which is beautiful, and Iroh kind of has, again, that guiding light that takes him out of it. And Zuko's so much happier. He's less grumpy. He's working in he's working in the tea shop. He goes on a cheeky date. Like, he's just genuinely so happy. And it's really sad, because after this very short-lived happiness, he has to then choose between his sister who represents his home, his father's love, admiration, his honor, and then his uncle, who represents dishonor. And Iroh's seen as very weak because he stopped fighting, and because he doesn't have this love for war, and he doesn't have this, what they would, because the Fire Nation reward anger and aggression by calling it strength, and Iroh doesn't show that. Keep in mind, he's a dragon of the West. He is on it. He can fight. But they refuse to give him that kind of respect. They're just like, no, he's weak. Look at him. Zuko, I think, always has a bit of, I know he loves his uncle, but I think he always has a bit of shame that Iroh's so loving and so kind and very affectionate with Zuko, and he's always very awkward around Iroh's affection, because I think in his mind, like I said, that's a show of weakness. And so by siding with his uncle, he's choosing weakness, and he's choosing a life of suffering and pain, and more than that, he's going against his father openly. And so because of that, he chooses his sister over his uncle. His uncle, who raised him, who went into exile with him so that he could protect his nephew, who called him his son after his own son died. He left him to rot in a cell. And I'm not even going to sit here like I'm angry at Zuko, because no one was angry at Zuko than Zuko was. When he went there, he had these weeks where he was living this lie. He had a bit of happiness in it. But ultimately, he hated it. He had everything he wanted. He had his dad. He had everything. And he hated every single minute of it, because he was just sat there with so much built up resentment and anger. He goes to his uncle first and tries to let it out at his uncle. Not happening. Because his uncle's not talking to him, so he has nothing he can blame him for. Like, tell me how to stop feeling this way. And Zuko has been guided his whole life by something. When he was going to find the Avatar, he was guided by his father and this distorted image of his honor, like I said before. And then even with Iroh, like, has always his whole life given him these little nudges of like, no, Zuko, do this way, and he still gives in to him, and he'll still do, like, even like kidnapping the Avatar. He's like, no, kidnap the Avatar like this, guides him in the right kind of direction, and Zuko follows him. Now we've come to a point where Zuko is left with nothing, no one to guide him. He doesn't want to go to his father, because asking advice from his father would make him look weak. Having any sort of feeling that isn't aggression or anger or power is weak. And he doesn't know what to do with all this feeling, and he does end up having that breakdown. He does end up talking about how when he's thinking about it, he is just angry at himself more than anyone else, because he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know why he's doing what's right in his head feels so wrong in his heart and in his soul and in who he is. And Iroh, one of my favorite quotes from Iroh that they talk about earlier in the show is, he says, pride is not the opposite of shame, but rather its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame. And I think this ties in so nicely with Zuko, because he thinks that he's really angry because he's not proud enough. But the fact of the matter is that pride comes from shame, because the only way that you're sitting there trying to talk about you're being overly proud, you're being out and you're boasting and all this kind of stuff, is because you've got something inside of yourself that needs that. You need this kind of validation of the outside world, because you've got this feeling of shame within yourself, so you need it numbed by something else. Does that make sense? With the Fire Nation, they're very showy of their powers and really aggressive, and because ultimately in and of themselves, their core and their moral is disgusting. They believe in taking over, destroying and hurting whoever they're in their path, because they can. They committed a genocide because they can, because someone was a threat and they stood in their way. And what I love about Zuko is that after he has that revelation about his history, and he starts to look at the world, he starts to look at the Fire Nation not just as himself, as whereas he had so much pride to be Fire Nation, because of his experiences in the outside world, he sees the Fire Nation the way that everyone else does. When that little boy in the village sees Fire Nation or sees Zuko, they see evil Fire Nation, evil son of the evil Fire Lord. He's evil, even though he just saved their lives. That's what they see. And it's the very similar thing with, there was a girl that he meets at the start of the show who had a big burn on her leg that a Fire Nation soldier had given her, and he looks at her with this really wide eyed kind of look of shock of like, oh my God, you get it? Like they hurt you too. And it is at that minute that he realizes this sadness and anger he feels towards his father, the whole world feels it towards the Fire Nation. And I love it because I think it's the first time that Zuko steps outside of himself and gets out of his, and I will say it, really selfish, childish kind of mindset, and realizes like, shit, the whole world is suffering how I'm suffering, but I can change that. And he does. And I love that when he leaves during the eclipse, he could just leave. There's nothing stopping him from just getting up and going during the chaos. He doesn't. He goes to his father and he confronts him. And it's one of my favorite scenes because, like I said, he doesn't need to do that. He did it because he, in his own heart and soul, needed to confront him. He needed to tell him, you are cruel and you are wrong, and what you did to me was cruel and wrong. And more importantly than that, what you did to the world was cruel and it was wrong. And I love it because it ties into what I was saying before. Ozai starts laughing at him. He's like, oh, your uncle's gotten to you. Because again, they all look down on Iroh. They look at him like a very weak, like he's the worst kind of person you could be. And Zuko's like, yeah, he has. And I love it because it's that moment that he finally gets over that shame of his uncle and being close to his uncle. And he finally sees that Iroh was never the weak one, hurting people and harming people and causing so much horror to people's lives does not make you strong. It just means that you're showing off. It's just your pride, and your pride is coming from a place of shame. And he leaves, and when he goes to the Avatar, again, one of my favorite things, he goes to the Avatar who's been trying to capture for 3 years. He goes to him on his knees, literally, and is like, I want to help you. And he's like, we don't want your help. And he's like, well, you at least take me prisoner. He's like, we don't want you as our prisoner, just go away. Like, there's no worse type of it. They wouldn't even spit on him. There is no worse kind of rejection. And it's not upsetting, but it's really humbling. You feel bad because you love Zuko and you've seen what he's done to get to this point. But then you see him from everyone else's perspective, the same way you see the Fire Nation from everyone else's perspective. And you're like, well, actually, he's caused a lot of suffering. And he slowly builds everyone's trust. And I like the fact that he respects that it's a slow process, but he keeps coming back and keeps trying to do better. And there's only one part where he's with Katara and he kind of gives up. And he's like, everyone's trusting me. Like, why don't you trust me? But Katara won't let him move past it. And that's the difficult thing with Zuko of like, even with his uncle when he did wrong, his uncle always kind of forgave him and let them move on. Katara's not doing that. She's not letting this just go and we can move on with our lives. She's not letting it happen. She's like, I trusted you. I was the first person to trust you and you betrayed me. And he has to hold it, even though he has this pride, the shame, and that's what's getting triggered in him. That's what causes his ego to get triggered. He has to hold it and say, okay, she's right. How do I fix this? And then he tries to find her mother's killer, which is very cute, actually. Very, very cute indeed. And it's a beautiful thing. And then even at the end, like when he finally, he's sitting there with them lot and they're sat on a cave on the floor, he's laughing, he's making tea, he's trying to make one of his uncle's jokes, which doesn't go very well, but he's just so happy. And when you look at his life from an outside perspective, you're sat on a dirty floor when you could have been in a castle with strangers instead of your own family. But that is his path. That's who he is. He's being true to himself. And so the world doesn't matter. What's happening outside doesn't matter. He's happy because he is who he is. And Zuko's story is such an important one when it comes to self-acceptance and self-belief, because you will never truly be happy if you are never truly yourself. If you walk around pretending to be someone else, the true you is suffering, and that's a fact of life. And I know it's hard to sit here and hear you need to pick a path and you need to make a choice because it's shit. But I've given you 2 examples of what happens when you do make a choice, and 2, no, they all made a choice. 2 examples of what happens when you accept change and you accept yourself and love yourself and allow yourself to grow and make mistakes and get better. And then when you don't, you can fight against destiny all your life. It's not something you can grab. It's not something that you can take hold of. You can spend your life fighting it and you will lose. And that's a fact of life. And it's very upsetting and it can be very hard. And I know it's very difficult for someone to sit here who doesn't know you and doesn't know what you've been through to say, you can actually make a choice and you can actually change your life. And it's annoying to hear. But what I would say is don't be so quick to do the buts. But I went through this, but I went through that. Everyone goes through shit. I'm so sorry. And I know it's not the same for everyone. I'm not saying that. It's very different for everyone. Everyone goes through shit. You do have a level of control over yourself. So look at your own decisions. What kind of decisions are you making? Are you practicing self-love? Are you looking after yourself? Or do you have no hope in yourself or no belief in yourself? And it's hard to find it, but you're worthy of it. Of course you are. Why wouldn't you be? Why can't it be you? This is what's crazy. I'm not like a self-help guru. I'm not like Andrew Tate, bro. I'm not going to sit here and sell you something and change your life. That's not who I am. I'm simply a normal person like you, highlighting some things that I used to help me realize that I could be better and that I could change. like I'm making a YouTube video. I never in my entire life thought I would ever make a YouTube video, ever. But I'm here, and I'm hoping it's gonna work, and I hope it goes well, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And if you have, then please subscribe, because I can't believe I'm saying it feels fake. This is the third time I'm doing this, and let's see if I'm gonna get up and the video is gonna be recorded. Inshallah. If not, maybe the dream's gonna have to die. Maybe Allah's trying to tell me something. But this is a video about self-hope, by the way, and belief and change, and don't give up. I'm the Dragon Warrior. Anyway, yeah, subscribe, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm going to try and post one every week. And like I said, I'm going to be doing different series just to give you a preview. I've got a lot of different things in the works, so I'm doing a lot of different Rick and Morty series, Avatar, and then what else I want to cover? There was a few other movies specifically that I wanted to cover, but this is the kind of shit that my channel is going to be about. So if this is the kind of stuff for you, please do subscribe, and if I get 2 subscribers, I'll make another video. How about that? Anyway, yeah, thank you. Bye. Please, yes. Ladies and gentlemen. So stupid. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so nervous. I feel sick. I feel like they're actually all starting from me. It sounds kind of contradictory because change and fate. That doesn't sound contradictory. What are you talking about? His favorite thing about himself is the fact that he did everything he did alone. I'm chatting shit. What are you talking about? Start again. I think what a lot of people don't realize about Toya and Shoto is the fact that Shoto didn't need to be. No, he did. Toya. I'm getting them confused. Game, the light before. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't say the word. Get high far, bro. This guy on. What the fuck am I even writing? How do I say the fire? I'm from Brum originally. Can you hear the Brum accent? Fire.